Today's podcast is brought to you by Quantrix Modeler Introductory Training, teaching the fundamental foundation that you need to become a Quantrix master. Go to gumroad.com/l/Quantrix training to learn more. Hey, welcome back to another Netcast. I'm Rich Lopez, Quantrix Authority. Sincerely appreciate you joining me today for episode number 183, Calculate Rolling Demand when Invalid Weeks in Structure. I've been racking my brain on this one for a lot of my week, and if you have a better way to do it, I would be more than happy to know. And if you don't, and if you've wondered how to do this, well, here's a solution to you, and I hope I've saved you a boatload of time. But I have here a fiscal calendar where I have demand across weeks, and my demand is in fiscal weeks of 4 valid weeks in the first month, 4 valid weeks in the second month, and then 5 weeks in the third month, and then I go back to 4, then I go back to 4 valid, and then 5 valid weeks in June, and so on, repeating that pattern through the end of the year. So it's 4, 4, 5. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to create a rolling average demand. Well, not a rolling average for my model today. For simplicity, I'm just going to say I want to do a rolling sum for the next 2 weeks. So if I were here in week 2, okay, I would expect to see that my demand would be 70 for the next 2 weeks. And again, that's what I have going on here when I'm using a simple sum sublist formula, okay? However, if I go out, say, to week 4 and I want to see the next 2 weeks, I would expect to see 130, but what I'm seeing is I'm seeing 60, because what Quantrix is doing is it's considering still this week 5 in its calculation, which is coming back with 0 and then adding 60, which gives me 60. But since it's an invalid week, I would really like to skip it, and I really wish there was a way to skip invalid weeks in sublist, but to my knowledge, there's not. So that's an enhancement request for you. So what's happening is when I have invalid weeks, I'm getting an invalid rolling demand. I'm getting a number that is not accurate. So instead of having it be 60 here, I would expect to see it be 130. But when I do have 5 weeks, you know, I certainly want it to consider this 150 in the calculation. So 150 plus 160 indeed is 310. So that is correct, right? As well as if I'm at 290 here, well, that's 140 plus 150. That's a rolling 2 weeks. That is indeed correct. So how can I get Quantrix to do it the right way? Okay, so what I need to do is I need to set up my model a little bit. And first off is I want to create an invalid indicator column. And what it's doing, or invalid indicator row or item. And what I'm doing here is I'm simply saying that week 5 is invalid because there is an error on that date. Okay, so it's giving me a little marker and it's saying that these guys are invalid. And now what I also want to add is I want to add this index year month other. And simply what I'm doing here is I'm doing a hashtag year month other, and it's giving me an index of this week within the context of year, month, and other. So you can see that I have 1 through you know, the end of time, which is 120 here for my data set. All right, now what I want to do is I want to know whether or not within my average or within the offset time frame that I want to consider, which is I guess 2 weeks, which I have down here as an input, I want to know if one of these falls across an invalid week. Okay, so if I'm right here, so if I'm in week 3 and I want to take a rolling total of the next 2 weeks, well, I want it to come back and tell me, well, this one's invalid, so I need to consider a 3rd week here. And if I'm in week 4 and I want to get a rolling sum, then, you know, it's going to be looking at these 2 initially, but since this is invalid, I want it to offset it an additional 1 and give me, bring back this 70, okay? So how do I get Quantrix to do this? That's what I'm going to show you now. And what we would need to do is we would need to create a SelectBetween statement, okay, that goes out and identifies whether or not within this offset range, if there is an invalid week, okay? And if there is, go ahead and give me a 1, because then I'm going to add that to kind of my offset of maybe a sublist or whatever, but I'm not going to use the sublist function. I'm going to use the select between. So first off, let's go out and see if within our offset range, if there is an invalid week. So this select between is going to equal sum select between. Okay, now I just follow the prompts. What do I want to bring back? I want to bring back the invalid week indicator, and I'm going to specify that as year, month, other. And what is my index going to be? What is my key list rather going to be? My key list is going to be the index, year, month, other. What value do I want to look up? I want to look up the index, year, month. Okay. And what is the other value I want to look up? Or what is my last value, the values I'm selecting between? It's going to be index, year, month, and I'm going to add to it actually my rolling. Now I created a rolling use down here because I don't want this calculation to be inclusive, okay, on the front end. So what I've done is I've said rolling, I really want rolling to be whatever I put in here plus 1, okay? So if I go ahead and I do this, I will try this out here. And I got a problem here, so let me just correct that. It's index, year, month, other, and I probably need to change that here as well. It's easier, I guess, if you point. So now what I have is I've created these flags here that tell me if I'm offsetting week 3 by 2, which I've done down here, then I've got an invalid week in my calculation. So give me a flag in week 3. If I'm offsetting, week 4 off by 2, well, I've got an invalid, taking invalid week, so go ahead and give me a flag here. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to repeat this sublist, or this select between rather, again, but what I also need to do is I need to add this select between to the end range, the highest value that I consider, and then when I do that, it should work for me beautifully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say here, I'm going to say rolling demand equals sum select between. What do I want to select between? I want to know, I want to take my demand, okay, year, month, other, and what do I want to look up? I want to look up my index, year, month, I need to do that differently, year, month, other. And what is my lookup value? My lookup value is going to be my index, okay? And then what is going to be my max value? It's going to be my index plus my rolling use plus any select between flag that I have going on here. When I go ahead and I do that, then indeed I like to think it's working. So in week 3, right here, I would expect to see 100 coming back, and bam, indeed it is coming back 100. In week 4, I would expect it to come back with 130, and indeed it is doing so. If I go to the next month here and I want to see something come back here, I would expect it to be 200 because it would be 90 plus this 110. So there you have it. It's working for me. So how I get to this rolling, monthly demand, or this rolling weekly demand across weeks that are invalid and ignoring those weeks, is I use simply 2 select betweens to make that happen. If you have a more elegant solution, I would be more than happy to hear it because I'm all about simplicity with Quantrix Modeler. So if you have an elegant solution, please let me know. If you have any questions about Quantrix, I do hope that you'll reach out to me at quantrixauthority@gmail.com. I absolutely love Quantrix, even though it teases my brains from time to time. So please join me again for another podcast of Quantrix Authority with Rich Lopez.